Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. A speaking. The music you're currently hearing in the background is Loki's Kunio-Kan remix of Boa's appearance, which I'll be linking in the description there. And as you can probably see, what I'm doing on the video is I'm taking Bannon Rubis' concept sprite for Abobo for River City Underground, and just doing a personal kind of fun animation, trying to make more of an animated idle stance for him. In case you haven't played the original Double Dragon series, which Abobo hails from, the idle stances for those particular series of games is really more of an idle frame, because unless the character is moving around, attacking, or getting attacked, they don't actually move a whole hell of a lot, to be honest. Since in this case, the general idea for the River City Ransom Underground shows that even in the more idle cases, the characters are moving around a hell of a lot more. It would only be appropriate to have a version of a Boa stance where he's got a bit more animation to him, although his regular stance where he just has his generally pumped up fist is actually pretty stiff, for lack of a better term. In order to break up that stiffness, one of the first things I decided to do is to add a little bit of a knee movement to it, just to add a little vertical movement. At this scale, I can really only get away with doing it 1 pixel difference, because otherwise it will look like he's crouching down too much or his legs are magically shrinking, which I could really do for kind of a crouching animation later down the line, but that's another story. And realistically, just because of how oversized they are, the majority of the animation will be on Abobo's arms themselves as they're kind of flexing and unflexing during this whole setup there. As they're flexing, everything moves a bit down. When they're unflexing, the arms are moving more to a rested position on the side. When it's far down enough, I actually move the shoulders a bit down, which I just did, I believe, based on the video timing here. And of course, once they're down enough, I have to draw a new set of hands so it'll be at a more appropriate angle, because if his hands remain in the same tightened fist motion the whole time, his wrist will effectively be breaking visually. So I have to draw a new set of hands in order to go along with that. Another thing which I ended up doing, although I accidentally forgot to record it in hindsight, is for the final animation, which is currently up on my DeviantArt gallery, I ended up alternating the pace at which his hands go up and down, because in this current format, which is on the video here, it's a little too symmetrical, so with too much symmetry, it's honestly a little boring to look at. So for the final bit, I actually paced it so the left and right hands end up going up and down at a different point in time, just to break up the monotony a bit, and just give it a little more motion, and throwing in a bit more pace before it goes down to a more relaxed position for just a brief moment. Kind of to fill in for a lack of for the lack of space to do a proper breathing motion. In this case, I'm having a particular bit of fun doing this sort of animation here with the RCR based stuff. Is first of all, Bannon's own process of drawing everything up in layers and kind of moving the parts around and filling in things in between is pretty similar to what I actually do for my own animation, as shown here. Although the difference is that he does his work in Photoshop, where I use something that's a bit more animation based, or strictly animation based, like graphic scale, especially for pixel art. And part of the reason for that is just because, at least in my own experience, I found animating stuff over in Photoshop requires a bit too many layers, and admittedly it does get kind of hard to keep track of things. Whereas on a graphic scale, it's really moving from one frame to the next, and as long as you set up the layer thing correctly from frame to frame, you can kind of just glide through pretty easily, at least in my own findings. Something else which I found a bit amusing was the way that Bannon drew up Abobo for the concept, right? It generally keeps the general impression that occurred from the first series of Double Dragon games, particularly for the NES, in that Abobo seems to have a mustache. Realistically, if you look at the old concept art, Bo was actually clean shaven for the most time, although there are a few variants which do add a form of facial hair, including one that honestly looks like a shirtless Mr. T for the most part, particularly from the arcade games. But at a certain point, people just ended up kind of illustrating him with a mustache at some point. This really shows up in a lot of fan art, and after Abobo's big adventure, it just kind of stuck, and it seemed to become a bit of a permanent thing, so from here on out, Abobo seems to have a handlebar mustache the whole time. Not too much time left on this recording here, so probably the last thing I want to bring up, just to cover a little basis for those who are a bit more of sticklers to the original NES format, while the image itself does use a lot of stuff from the NES palette, particularly the NES palette image that's been circulating the internet for a few years at this point. Technically, Abobo here doesn't exactly fit within NES restrictions, because in the case of those restrictions, I believe it was 8x8 pixel tiles, where within those tiles, you really could fit only 4 colors within that range, which would be 3 regular colors plus the transparency. And at that point, particularly around areas like the pants, it would probably clearly exceed the color limit at that point. But generally, thankfully we're not dealing with the exact NES restrictions, so we can get away with having a little more fun here. Well, about out of time at this point. I'll be doing some more Retro Ninja Gaming shortly enough, as well as a few more pixel art videos in the near future. Thanks all for watching, and I'll be hopefully speaking with you all again very soon. Take it easy.